devastation the famine caused led to a mass exodus of 1 million Irish people. Those who emigrated and their descendants became known as the Irish Diaspora. Most of those who emigrated moved to the USA, Canada, Australia, South Africa, Britain, and New Zealand. From the 1840s onwards, emigration rates soared. Only in the 1970s did inward migration briefly overtake emigration. This video will focus on those who emigrated to Britain and the US and those who were left behind in Ireland. The Irish emigrating to Britain was not new. For example, just before the famine, 17% of the population of Liverpool was comprised of Irish people. Travelling to Britain was much cheaper than going anywhere else, and the trip was shorter. Life in Britain was only slightly better than in Ireland. The Irish were among the poorest, living in slums in the cities. They had to survive on begging. When they could get work, they accepted low wages, which made them unpopular amongst the British, who believed they were stealing jobs from British people. Many Irish people died of diseases, like typhus, due to unsanitary and overcrowded living conditions. When conditions for the working class improved, the Irish started working as publicans and shopkeepers. They became involved in the building of the British Canal, road and rail networks. The Irish gradually married into the British population and moved up the social class system. Today, at least 6 million people, around 10% of the British population, have at least one Irish-born grandparent. Life in the US was just as hard as in Britain, if not harder. Emigration to the US was expensive, and the journey was long and difficult. The main entry into the US was in New York City. Some entered through Canada. Between 1841 and 1850, 910,000 people emigrated from Ireland to the US, with 250,000 people entering in 1847. The US population was composed of mainly various Protestant denominations, and the famine migrants were Catholic and spoke very little English. They were also uneducated and competed with Americans for manual labor jobs. Many were recruited to serve in the American Civil War and helped to build the Union Pacific Railroad. After many people started emigrating to the US, many businesses put "No Irish Need Apply" in job advertisements. Because of the famine, many Irish Americans had a deep-seated hatred towards the British government and supported the Irish nationalist movement. Today, over 41 million Americans claim Irish ancestry, including the current US President, Joe Biden. The Irish nationalist movement in Ireland grew stronger than ever after the famine. An Irish nationalist is a person who believes that Ireland is its own nation. While the majority of Ireland were nationalists, the north of Ireland was comprised of unionists and two main types of nationalists: constitutional nationalists and radical nationalists. Constitutional nationalists wanted there to be a government in Ireland and hoped to achieve this by political means. They believed the British government to be too far removed from the issues of Ireland. Many wanted home rule, meaning Ireland would have its own parliament in Dublin that would govern local affairs, while Westminster would deal with trade and foreign affairs. Ireland would still be a part of the United Kingdom. Those who supported Home Rule formed a political party called the Home Rule Party, which later became the Irish Parliamentary Party. Radical nationalists wanted full independence by any means necessary, including through violence. They formed the Irish Republican Brotherhood. Unionists wanted Ireland to remain a part of the UK and be ruled by Britain. Most Unionists were Protestant and were descendants of those who settled in Ireland during the Ulster Plantation. They believed if Home Rule occurred, Protestants would be discriminated against by a Catholic majority parliament in Dublin. In 1884, the British government passed a law which allowed all men who owned or rented property worth more than £10 the right to vote, which meant there was an increase in Ireland of 300,000 voters. In 1885, the Irish Parliamentary Party won 86 seats, and they held the balance of power in Parliament. They allied with the Liberal Party and managed to push through the first Home Rule Bill in April 1886. The Conservative Party were against the bill, as they feared Home Rule would eventually lead to full independence for Ireland. The bill was defeated and another election was held. The Conservatives were elected as the main political party in Britain, and the Irish Parliamentary Party was ousted from power sharing. The leader of the Irish Parliamentary Party, Charles Stewart Parnell, was embroiled in scandal. He was having an affair with a married woman, and Catholic Ireland disapproved of this. Many people withdrew their support for the party, and as a result it split in two. Parnell remained the leader of the official party, but the other half formed the Irish National League. A second Home Rule Bill in 1893 was also unsuccessful. It passed in the House of Commons, but was vetoed in the House of Lords. The bill would not be addressed again until 1912. Cultural nationalism emerged in the late 1800s. The Gaelic League was established in 1893 by Owen MacNeill and Douglas Hyde. The organisation was set up to promote the Irish language. They founded an Irish newspaper called An Clod of Solace, meaning sword of light, which published Irish poems and short stories written in Irish. People were trained to teach Irish to local communities. They organised parties and ceilidhs to encourage Irish dancing and traditional Irish music. The Gaelic League slowed the demise of the Irish language and culture. The Irish Literary Revival was a movement that aimed to promote Irish literature. The Irish Literary Society was set up in 1892, which promoted Irish literary works. A new form of literature emerged in Ireland by the end of the 1800s. It was written in English but very Irish in character, many of its contents and themes being inspired by Irish myths and legends. The Irish National Theatre Society was established by W.B. Yeats, Lady Augusta Gregory, Edward Martyn and George Moore. They opened the Abbey Theatre in 1904, and this theatre supported Irish writers and staged plays. The Gaelic Athletic Association, or the GAA for short, was established in 1884. Irish sports had gone into decline in the 1800s, especially after the famine. Sports like hurling and Gaelic football became unknown in some areas, and people played them by different rules throughout the country. The GAA was set up to establish rules for the sports and promote them. Irish sports became more popular amongst Irish people, especially young people, as a result. The Irish Parliamentary Party declined in popularity after the split, but was reunified under John Redmond in 1900. It had little power but had much support. Sinn Féin was founded in 1905 by Arthur Griffith. Sinn Féin translates to We Ourselves in Irish. It is a political party, and when it was founded, its main aims were for a dual monarchy, to develop Irish industry, and to use parliamentary abstention. This means the Irish MPs elected would not take their seat in Westminster until a parliament was established in Ireland. From 1895 to 1906, the Conservative Party and Unionists held power in London. They ensured that Home Rule would not be passed while they were in power. In 1906, the Liberal Party was voted into government. In 1910, following an election, they needed more seats and asked the Irish Parliamentary Party for help by creating a government together. They agreed on the condition that another Home Rule Bill would be put into motion. In 1911, the Liberals passed the Parliamentary Act, meaning the House of Lords could not veto a bill completely, and could only delay laws from passing for a period of 2 years. In 1912, the House of Commons passed the Home Rule Bill, and the House of Lords had no choice but to allow it to pass. It would become law in 1914. The Unionists were outraged. They strongly opposed the bill and believed if opposition was strong enough, government would not enforce Home Rule. The Unionists organised demonstrations and protests against Home Rule. They made a declaration called the Ulster Solemn League and Covenant, which stated that Unionists would use all means at their disposal to prevent a Home Rule Parliament from being set up in Ireland. It was signed by over 200,000 men in 1912, and some even signed it in their own blood. 250,000 women also signed their own similar declaration. The Unionists formed the Ulster Volunteer Force, or the UVF, in 1913. It was a paramilitary force that was comprised of amateur soldiers. Some 100,000 people joined the UVF, and the Unionists bought 35,000 guns for them. Owen MacNeill of the Gaelic League suggested that nationalists should follow the Unionists' example by forming their own paramilitary force and pressuring the British government to ensure Home Rule was enforced. The Irish Volunteer Force was founded in 1913 and had almost 100,000 volunteers. Both groups were armed, and Home Rule was causing problems in government. Civil war became a real possibility. However, on the 4th of August 1914, Britain declared war against Germany, starting the First World War. Home Rule became law on the 18th of September 1914, but because of the war it was suspended. Both the UVF and the Irish Volunteer Force encouraged the volunteers to join the war effort and enlist. Both wanted to show their support so the British government would do what they wanted. Around 250,000 Irish men fought on Britain's side in the First World War, and between 30,000 and 50,000 Irishmen died. Many believed the war would be over in a few months. However, it lasted 4 years, and during those 4 years the nationalists grew impatient and decided to take matters into their own hands.